Guerrilla warfare is a unique form of combat. It's not fought by large traditional armies on open battlefields. Instead, it's the strategy of the small, the mobile, and the unconventional. The term itself, guerrilla, comes from the Spanish word for little war. This name really captures its essence. It describes conflicts where smaller groups of fighters use surprise attacks, ambushes, and sabotage to fight a much larger and more powerful enemy. These fighters are often not professional soldiers. They're civilians, rebels, or partisans who blend back into the local population after an attack. This makes them incredibly difficult to find and to fight. Their strength doesn't come from numbers or heavy weapons, but from their knowledge of the local terrain and the support they get from the people around them. The core principle behind guerrilla warfare is to avoid direct confrontation. A guerrilla force knows it just can't win a pitched battle against a well-equipped army, so it refuses to fight on the enemy's terms. Instead of standing and fighting, guerrilla fighters strike quickly and then disappear. They might blow up a bridge, raid a supply convoy, or attack a remote outpost before melting back into the jungle, mountains, or city streets. This constant harassment wears down the larger army over time. It drains their resources, lowers their morale, and creates a constant state of fear and uncertainty. The goal is to make the cost of occupation too high for the enemy to sustain, forcing them to eventually withdraw without ever being truly defeated in a major battle. This type of warfare is fundamentally asymmetric. That means the two sides are not equal in strength or resources. The guerrilla fighter turns this weakness into a strength. Lacking tanks and artillery, they rely on intelligence, speed, and the element of surprise. They're deeply connected to the local environment, which they use as both a weapon and a shield. A dense forest, a sprawling urban slum, or a rugged mountain range can become a fortress for the guerrilla, and a confusing, dangerous maze for the invading army. The support of the local people is also crucial. They provide food, shelter, and vital information about enemy movements, acting as the eyes and ears of the guerrilla force. Understanding guerrilla warfare is really key to understanding much of modern history. It's the strategy of the underdog, a way for a determined group to challenge a global superpower. It's not about capturing territory in the traditional sense, but about winning the hearts and minds of the population and making an area ungovernable for the enemy. It's a long, slow, and often brutal form of conflict that blurs the line between soldier and civilian. By choosing when and where to fight, these small, irregular forces can inflict significant damage and achieve political goals that would be impossible through conventional means, fundamentally changing the rules of war. The tactics of guerrilla warfare are as old as war itself. Long before the term was coined, ancient tribes and rebels used these methods to resist powerful empires. The Roman Empire with its mighty legions frequently faced this challenge. In the Teutoburg Forest in 9 AD, Germanic tribesmen led by Arminius used their intimate knowledge of the swampy, wooded terrain to ambush and annihilate 3 Roman legions. They didn't meet the Romans in open battle. Instead, they used hit-and-run attacks over several days, turning the Roman strength and discipline into a disadvantage in the difficult landscape. This devastating defeat showed that even the most powerful army could be vulnerable to an unconventional foe who refused to play by the established rules of engagement. The name guerrilla became famous during the Peninsular War in the early 1800s. When Napoleon's French army invaded Spain, the Spanish regular army was quickly defeated. However, Spanish civilians rose up in resistance. These Spanish guerrilleros formed small, independent bands that constantly harassed the French occupiers. They attacked supply lines, ambushed small patrols, and shared intelligence with the British forces, led by the Duke of Wellington. These actions tied down hundreds of thousands of French soldiers who were desperately needed elsewhere in Europe. The constant little war drained French resources and morale, contributing significantly to Napoleon's eventual defeat in the region. The 20th century saw guerrilla warfare used on a global scale. T.E. Lawrence, also known as Lawrence of Arabia, famously led Arab rebels against the Ottoman Empire during World War I. He understood that his small, mobile force on camels couldn't defeat the Turkish army in a direct fight, so he focused on disrupting their logistics. He led daring raids on the Hejaz Railway, a vital supply line for the Ottoman forces. By blowing up tracks and bridges, he paralyzed the enemy's ability to move troops and supplies, effectively winning a war of attrition without ever engaging in a major battle. His strategies demonstrated how a weaker force could strike at a modern army's technological vulnerabilities. In the years after World War II, Guerrilla tactics became the primary tool for anti-colonial movements around the world. Ho Chi Minh and the Viet Minh in Vietnam used them to fight first the French and then the Americans. The Viet Cong established vast networks of tunnels and relied on the support of the rural population to wage a prolonged war against a technologically superior superpower. Similarly, Fidel Castro and Che Guevara's small band of revolutionaries in Cuba used the Sierra Maestra Mountains as a base to launch attacks against the Batista regime. These conflicts proved that a determined insurgency, using classic guerrilla principles, could successfully challenge and even defeat the world's most powerful nations. The most important tactic in the guerrilla fighter's arsenal is the ambush. This is the classic hit-and-run maneuver that really defines this style of warfare. Guerrillas will carefully study their enemies' routines, learning the exact times and routes of supply convoys or patrols. They then choose a location that gives them a significant advantage, like a narrow mountain pass, a dense part of a jungle, or a tight street in a city. The attack is swift, violent, and designed to cause maximum confusion and damage in the shortest possible time. Before the larger, more cumbersome enemy force can effectively react and bring its superior firepower to bear, the guerrillas have already withdrawn, disappearing back into the terrain from which they emerged. Sabotage is another key tactic used to weaken a larger enemy force. This involves destroying infrastructure that's vital to the enemy's war effort. Guerrillas don't need to defeat an army in battle if they can prevent that army from being able to fight at all. They might blow up railway lines to stop the movement of troops and supplies, just like Lawrence of Arabia did. They could also destroy bridges, communication lines, power plants, or fuel depots. These acts of sabotage are low risk for the guerrillas, but have a massive impact on the enemy. They create logistical nightmares, slow down military operations, and force the occupying army to dedicate huge numbers of soldiers to simply guarding every piece of important infrastructure. Guerrilla fighters also rely heavily on propaganda and psychological warfare. Winning the war isn't just about military victories, it's about winning the support of the people and demoralizing the enemy. Guerrillas work to persuade the local population that their cause is just and that victory is inevitable. This helps them gain recruits, food, and shelter. At the same time, they work to create a sense of constant fear and vulnerability among the enemy soldiers. The knowledge that an attack could come at any time from any direction is psychologically exhausting. This constant stress can be just as damaging as any physical weapon, slowly eroding the will of the occupying army to continue the fight. Finally, the use of terrain is a tactic in itself. A guerrilla force treats the landscape as its most powerful weapon. Mao Zedong, a master strategist, famously said that guerrillas must move amongst the people as a fish swims in the sea. The same is true for their relationship with the environment. They use mountains, jungles, swamps, and even densely populated cities as their sanctuaries. The Viet Cong's incredible network of Cu Chi tunnels is a perfect example. These tunnels allowed them to live, train, and launch surprise attacks from right under the feet of American soldiers. For the guerrilla, the terrain isn't an obstacle, it's their greatest ally, providing cover, concealment, and a decisive advantage. The success of guerrilla warfare throughout history has fundamentally changed how nations approach conflict. Major military powers can no longer assume that their technological and numerical superiority will guarantee a swift victory. The experiences of the United States in Vietnam and the Soviet Union in Afghanistan were powerful lessons. In both cases, a global superpower was fought to a standstill by a determined, low-tech insurgency that used guerrilla tactics. These conflicts showed that occupying a country is far more difficult than conquering it. Modern armies have had to develop new strategies, known as counterinsurgency, to deal with this threat. This involves not just fighting, but also winning the hearts and minds of the local population. One of the biggest challenges posed by guerrilla warfare is the difficulty in distinguishing between a fighter and a civilian. Guerrillas don't wear uniforms. They live within the community, and can be farmers by day and fighters by night. This makes it incredibly difficult for a conventional army to identify and target the enemy without causing civilian casualties. These accidental deaths can turn the local population against the occupying force, creating more support for the insurgency and fueling a vicious cycle of violence. This moral and legal complexity is one of the defining features of modern asymmetric conflicts and poses a huge problem for professional armies bound by the rules of war. The principles of guerrilla warfare have also been adapted to new environments, most notably the urban landscape. So-called urban guerrilla tactics have been used by groups in conflicts from Northern Ireland to Iraq. Cities offer a different kind of jungle, a maze of streets, buildings, and subterranean tunnels that can provide excellent cover for fighters. Insurgents can use car bombs, improvised explosive devices, and sniper attacks before melting back into the civilian population. This type of warfare is particularly challenging for conventional armies, as the risk of collateral damage is extremely high, and every military operation is scrutinized by the global media. The city itself becomes the battlefield. In summary, guerrilla warfare has evolved from an ancient tactic of tribal resistance into a primary feature of 21st century conflict. It has proven to be a highly effective strategy for weaker forces to challenge stronger ones by refusing to fight a conventional war. It's forced powerful nations to rethink their military doctrines and has blurred the lines between war and peace, soldier and civilian. The legacy of the guerrilla is the understanding that victory in war is not always decided by the side with the biggest army or the most advanced weapons. It's often decided by the side with the greatest determination, the strongest connection to the people, and the smartest strategy.